Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Vote Cod. So we're going to start all over again.
Keep that for the blooper reel.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Vote Podcast, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. podcast. We've already done this 3 times for all of you listening at home. Mike Madrid, where are you? Because I sound like I'm absolutely drunk this morning.
I think you've been hitting the bottle a little bit early. I'm at Disneyland, so if my hotel room looks like it's Alice in Wonderland, it's not all you're drinking. It actually looks like an Alice in Wonderland hotel room. For those of you that don't know, out here in California, almost all of the lobbying associations have their December winter meetings at the Disneyland hotel areas. Not just because there's so many hotel rooms, but also because it's easy to just kind of bring the family for a winter break. And so about everybody in Sacramento kind of moves to Orange County.
So it's a small world after all.
And he sings. And
it's a small world. You know what? I want to hear about your Thanksgiving. But let me tell you, for all of you YouTube viewers who are actually watching the video show, and you should watch the video show because I'm really pretty. Other than that, to show you what I got for Thanksgiving from California, Mike, you want to see it?
Yes. I want to hear about your California trip.
This is California Highway Patrol ticket from California is what I got.
That's impressive. Brother, I did not know that you got a ticket. That's impressive. That's hard to get. Tell me the story behind that.
This would have been a better ticket if they'd have showed up on motorcycles and they would have been a Latino and a white guy from a really great movie I grew up watching about California Highway Patrols called Chips.
Ponch and John.
So I was like, my God, I'm getting pulled over. But it was some regular young Latino kid in a California Highway Patrol. I'm driving from San Francisco, south out of San Francisco, whatever south out of San Francisco, to where Ebony's aunt lives, Donna, to go to their after Thanksgiving the next day for dinner at their house. I am going the speed limit. I am in a regular vehicle. I know better than to speed. I'm driving. And all of a sudden, this dude wheels up behind me. I have to wake up Ebony and be like, we're going to get a ticket. I don't know what I have done. Evidently, Mexicans can't drive Jeeps in California, but let's see what this is. And evidently, this dude had pulled up beside me, and I was looking at my cell phone. That's what I got a ticket for.
Gotcha. Well, that explains it. It's not speeding. It's looking at your cell phone is a big thing in California. That's like the worst violation you can do. It's not all of the other crimes that you could commit. It's not.
I may or may not have looked at my lovely wife and said, there are motherfuckers out here killing each other in California and homeless people sleeping at the state capitol. But God forbid I use my cell phone in this car.
Yeah, you sound like a
stop it. I know where you're going.
Okay, I'll stop right there because everybody else knows where I'm going too. Everyone else knows where I'm going too. But, well, congratulations for doing something very difficult to do in California.
Now there's some of my tax dollars in D.C. going to go to California to pay for all you liberals out there and all the things you're going to do with my tax dollars.
We appreciate you. We appreciate your contributions, and thanks for giving at the office there.
Thanksgiving, though, other than this speeding ticket, was lovely. I want y'all to know that I stayed at the Berkeley Marina right down the street from her Uncle Dan. Her Uncle Dan, by the way, Mike, you should know, is a regular listener. He's lived in Berkeley his whole life. He's got a wonderful family. We had a great Thanksgiving dinner at his house. I love Berkeley. We found a great little coffee shop called Lavender's. We ate lots and lots of turkey at Uncle Dan's house with the family, and we got out and did some hiking. We hiked up in the Berkeley Hills. And then on the last day, we went to Mount Tam, which is north of downtown San Francisco a little bit. And I got to see some redwoods that I think are the most amazing trees in the world. But what a great place in the Bay Area in the summertime.
Mount Tamaulipas.
In the wintertime.
Well, first, shout out to Uncle Dan. Thanks for being with us. And brother, maybe someday I can come down and break bread with you for Thanksgiving. Send me the invite. I will come down. I will not speed, and I will not check my cell phone on the way down. We'll leave that for Chuck.
But Uncle Dan's daughter, just for you to know, Mike, Uncle Dan's daughter, Madison, was the one who got married in Sacramento when me and Ebony came and saw you.
Well, I feel like I know the whole family now. And
See?
I'm glad like I feel like, I mean, I haven't been invited to the weddings or Thanksgiving yet, but I feel like we're getting close.
We're getting close for sure.
And you did see a very gorgeous part of the state, some beautiful views. The redwoods, people think that the ancient forests are just way up north by Oregon. The redwoods
No.
actually come down to the Monterey coast area. They are spectacular. They're just really gorgeous. I know Chuck kind
Can
of
you
big
see Ebony in that picture? See how little she looks?
is
See her
little.
leaning against that tree. Watch this when I pan out. Look how
They're,
big those things are.
they're spectacular, majestic.
Crazy.
They are the oldest living organisms on the planet too. They go older than Christ, older than the calendar we use for
Gee,
time.
they ain't older than Jesus, really?
Jesus did not. Those things were little saplings when Jesus came out and about.
Oh,
They were already
wow.
up and running around or growing around. They weren't running much as trees because trees don't do that. But they were up and they were doing their things. They were sprouting leaves and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna be big."
Okay, where were you at?
I went to the Dominican Republic.
For Thanksgiving, like everybody does, evidently. What do you mean, the
Everybody
Dominican?
goes to the DR. I had never been, got the opportunity to go, and I'm like, hell yes, I'm going to go to another country that I not only have never been to, but might otherwise never have the chance. The little island nation out there, weather was fantastic. Stayed right there on the beach. Woke up every morning, had a cup of coffee on the balcony overlooking the beach, and thinking about Thanksgiving. And I'll tell you, there's something kind of cool about being abroad on Thanksgiving because, as we all know, Thanksgiving is a U.S. holiday. Started by Mr. Abraham Lincoln himself, essentially, as a reminder, as a day of commemoration and gratitude during the Civil War. Kind of keeping up our spirits during the battle as it was continuing, a country at war. And from that time on, we have celebrated Thanksgiving. Now, other countries have kind of said, "Hey, that's a good idea." Americans have a good idea. Look at that. Canada specifically has a day of gratitude. I learned that because I was with some Canadians on Thanksgiving down in the Dominican Republic. But there's something nice about exporting something that is well received by the rest of the world by saying, yeah, this is kind of cool, a day of thanks. Let's do that. And it was great to meet the people of the Dominican Republic. There's a
Did you
great
get turkey in the Dominican Republic?
Oh yeah, three.
Wow.
We made
Are you sure it was turkey and not a duck?
It might have been
A big duck.
yeah. I'm not exactly sure. It tasted like turkey, so we're just gonna go with that. Sometimes you eat these things and you don't think too much about it because otherwise, you might bother yourself a little bit. So, three big turkeys, a lot of expats down there, beautiful country, lots to kind of be thankful for and appreciate and gear up. Really reflective of a phenomenal year on so many fronts, Chuck. We'll have to do an episode on that later this year. But I've got some stuff I want to talk about, if that's okay. I want to jump into.
Here, this ought to be good.
And this is because I realized before we jumped on the show that there are a couple of things I have never done in my career. And one of those is I have never, ever been able to interview or talk to somebody who is considering becoming the chairperson of the Democratic National Committee.
Of course you haven't, but go ahead.
And I was thinking about this and going, this is, I know Chuck really well. We spent a lot of time together. We're with each other virtually every week. We've been doing, shows and podcasts and discussions for some time now. And I'm like, this guy could be the chairperson of the largest, oldest political party in the world. Democratic Party has been around a long damn time. And I say that because, at a time when you're not just a longtime party activist, but you're a political professional who brings a life experience to a potential race here. And you also are not just one of the very few voices in the Democratic Party that has been loudly saying we need to get back to a working class ethic here. We need to go talk to working class people of color. But you've also done it, and you've done it successfully, and you did it in a year when not a whole lot of the rest of the party has done it. And finally, I'm going to end with this. You've shown them a way on how to do it at a time when this is desperately what needs to be done. I mean, the timing couldn't be better for the Democrats to kind of rally and say, this is the person who has, part of the season shown us the way to the promised land. Why wouldn't he be that person? And so when you mentioned a few weeks ago that this was something you were considering, at first I was like, why would anybody want to do that to themselves? And then I realized, oh yeah, that's because we're in politics and that's what you do. There's a lot of sacrifice involved here. I thought there's probably not anybody better suited for this position to do this, better able able to actually do the nuts and bolts of implementation on doing this with a 50-state strategy, because breaking news, spoiler alert, Latinos are in and growing in all 50 states. And then I started to get a lot of people texting and calling me and saying, Chuck's going to run. Chuck's going to do this. This is fantastic. How can I help? And I'm like, hell, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to get a chairman elected to the Democratic National Committee. So talk us a little bit through about how this happened. I mean, you and I talked about it at a very cursory level, but I never, got in the way of your business or got actively engaged. I'm obviously very supportive, but I don't know that I think I'd be more of a harm to your efforts as opposed to a help. Tell me what happened.
Well, I appreciate that, and I've been thinking about it a long time, and I'll take everybody through the process of I started getting calls right after the election, and so people should know that this was not my idea, and people wanted to know if I would run, I would be good. And keep in mind what me and Mike Madrid talk about, maybe Mike more than me, is that there's been a problem going on. There's been an under appreciation of us, the Latino voters. Latino voters have been becoming way more of a persuasion universe. Mike Madrid has talked about this working class problem Democrats have had. You've heard me hollering about it. So I think lots of people who listen to this podcast think, hey, who's better? Mike Madrid can't do it because Mike's a Republican, but Chuck Rocha could do it. And they seem like pretty common sense fellas. And so I actually started thinking maybe this was something I wanted to do. This is a way I could give back. This is a way I could help fix the party. This is a way I could get the party back to where I want it to be. We could get back to winning elections and doing the things that I wanted. And, I'm not going to bury the lead. And I want to spend some time here with Mike and answer questions about not only why I've decided not to run, but why I've decided not to run, but then also what I want to see done with the party. Because for all of you loyal listeners, the reason I'm not going to run, this is being recorded on Wednesday, tonight at 11 p.m. on CNN. I will talk about I'm not going to run and why I'm not going to run, but I'm giving all of you a personal and in-depth interview with Mike to tell you that and what that means to me and what I have planned to do. But the reason I can't run is I've had conversations with the last two party chairs, Mike, because I wanted to make sure, as a dumb old redneck from East Texas, that I knew what the chair did. It seems cool. And it seems like getting to be in charge of the party when there's no president means you're the head Democrat in charge. And that's what I want to be. But after talking to these two chairmen, I realized that they've said, look, you're really working for these 455 board members that are the executive council of the DNC. And your one job is to raise money for the party. And it starts very immediately to raise money for a governor's race in New Jersey and a governor's race in Virginia. That becomes immediate. And you need to go find about $12 million to run two governor's races through the state party. And thinking about that, and I'll end with the second point. The first is I don't want to be a fundraiser. That's not what I want to do. That's not my vision for what I want to do with my time. I do want to fix the party. I do want to get back to our working class values. I do want to fix our problem with Latino voters, but being a fundraiser and raising money for the party seems like a horrible job. And I don't want to do that. Yeah. And the second thing is to all of you people on the internet, a lot of you Latino vote listeners, if this election for party chair was actually going to be with the people who are Democrats or independents or people who care about making this country a better place than it is right now, I would win this thing going away. Everybody would vote for me. People want me to run. They want a non-college educated working class brown guys with calluses on his hands like I have. I think the party's yearning for that. But you know who's not? 455 political insiders at the DNC. Not all of them, but a majority of them don't want my voice in there doing that. They'd love to hear from me, but they don't want me to be the chairman. And some of that may be right. I'm rough around the edges. I've been scraped up a lot. Sometimes my mouth gets me in trouble. Now, Mike Madrid and others would say that's exactly what the party needs. And I get that. And I agree with that. But it's two different things of, Chuck, you should be what's best for the party. And Chuck, you can get elected from 455 DNC members when there's two state party chairs running as it is. So I'm enough of a good political strategist, Mike, to know what my chances are and think that my voice is much better on the outside, holding them accountable and trying to actually fix and rebuild the party. And that's why I've made this decision.
Well, I respect the hell out of that. And I always respect a candidate when I have these talks with them to let them know about what they think it's going to be and what it actually is going to be. And I think this is important for listeners to understand. The sole job of the chairperson is to raise millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it is tough, grinding, brutal thankless work because you will be attacked. You'll have to defend everybody. You become the tip of the spear. So you have to not only defend everything that's happened in the past, you have to defend a strategy going forward, even though there is no strategy because there is no nominee. And at the same time, inspire confidence amongst the donor class to bring in the gazillions of dollars required to raise the money. So I get it. I get it. I'm not going to say I'm not a little bit, deflated because the other part of this that we don't talk about, maybe we shouldn't talk about it too much, but there's not a lot of Latinos out there that are at the level of raising millions and gazillions of dollars. And because we're not, we never get chosen. And if we never get chosen because we can't do it, it becomes a vicious cycle where there are fewer and fewer blue collar folks who are able to actually take the reins of the job where it actually needs to be done. And I say that because that doesn't mean that being the chairperson is the only thing that you can or be doing to help out the party. And I know that you've got a passion for that. So have you talked to other candidates that are running, and are they as committed to doing what you think needs to be done as I mean, are you guys seeing things the same way with what the party needs to be done?
I think there'll be other people that'll get into this race. The top two contenders right now are the two state party chairs, one from Minnesota, one from Wisconsin. And they've both called. I haven't taken their calls. I want to get through my process, and then I'll talk to people. I will support somebody maybe if they will align their values around what I want to see the party do. And I don't care if they're white boys. I've said some quirky stuff in Politico yesterday about we don't need a bunch of well-intentioned white boys running the party. And, folks expect that out of me, and I'll call a spade again, while a lot of people would like to see me run. But look, I don't hold any ill will, and I will talk to all of them. And if there's somebody I can get behind, I would be much better suited as somebody probably hired by one of them to actually go in there and create a strategic plan to redevelop the new branding system is what I would like to do, and to go in and rebrand the party over a long period of time around what we've talked about on this podcast. Now, if they want to do that, I'm all in to do it. And this ain't about the money. This is about actually having the power to have a strategic plan that does something. Incremental change, Mike, me and you know this, ain't going to happen because people won't a short-term solution, especially donors. You know this, Mike. Donors who think they have enough money to fix everything quickly think they can just fix this problem. But it's going to take time, and we're going to have to feel a little heat and kind of take some blows. Remember when I said we need some folks who've kind of been scuffed up a little? If you've been scuffed up a little, if you've Mike Madrid and put your whole career on hold to go to an island and burn the boats behind you to say, I want to do what's better for the Republicans, no matter what it does to my career, that takes courage and being willing to get scuffed up. And that's one of the biggest respects I have for Mike Madrid, because I now realize how hard that is. I don't want to live through that. I don't want to live through being drugged for the next 2 months because I want to be the DNC chair. I got a career. I've got a wife. I've got a little boys. I've got a family, and I don't want to be drugged. And there's much better things I can do, especially to get a job that makes me a full-time fundraiser. The last point on this is that there's real consequences in my life, right? My business partner, who is on TPS, expires in March, and I've got to figure out what we're going to do with the firm if she literally has to deport with her family, which is what she'll have to do, people. There's real consequences in people's lives. My mother and my son, my mother who only has one income, and that's Social Security, rely on me. Now, you could be saying, oh, woe is me, Chuck. What I'm getting at here is I don't play a real guy on TV. I am a real guy with real problems. And I don't have the literal luxury, as some of these folks do who have great incomes and safety nets and families with money. Like if Chuck Rocha goes down, there's a whole sector of my family that goes down with Chuck Rocha. Yeah. So taking a pay cut to take a job that I really don't want because I don't want to be a fundraiser is not something that I finally realized I couldn't take the chance to do just because I'd love to see Chuck Rocha, DNC chairman, on the door, which feeds my ego and everything about it. And for all of you young men out there, this is a lesson to all of you, is that it's taken me to be 50 years old to realize that just seeing Chuck Rocha, chairman of the DNC, that's cool as hell, is not worth some of the things that you have to endure to have that. And just having the title for a job that you end up not liking is not something you can do. Do what you love to do, make the change you can make, but don't let your ego get in the way of what's best for you and your family.
Well, that's some real wisdom right there about just the whole game, not just life, but the business of politics and the way this actually works from a real practical standpoint, beyond these romantic notions of what it is there are real lives and real people behind all of this. So let me just say, I'm proud of you. Just for the guy you are, for the battles you've been in. for the experience that you were bringing to this, have brought, and will continue to bring, by the way. This isn't over. This is the beginning. And my strong sense is you'll get a call and talk to all of these candidates. You'll have a very good list and a good vision of what you want to see the party do. And my hope is that will be a strong role for you. I mean, Ruben Gallego was smart enough to call you early to build that relationship and saw what you had in you. Tommy Baldwin did. A whole lot of House Democrats did this cycle. Everywhere you went, you saw an increase in the Latino male share of the vote over where Democrats performed. And if that's not a resume builder in terms of what the party needs from somebody like you, I don't know what is in this environment. Like, against the biggest headwinds, all of your clients did well because of the work and what you brought to the table. Why the Democratic Party wouldn't want that, I don't know.
We're going to see, and I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to help Democrats win. I just don't need to be the chairman of the party to do it. And I think that me working for the DNC, me trying to think about this, Mike, is we're going to have, if not 10, 30 people running for president starting now, because we're going to have a big presidential primary. And I'd love to be a part of somebody who has a vision for America to return the party. That's a position of power. That's a position where you can orchestrate and change a whole party. For all of you people who hate Donald Trump, think about what he individually did to the Republican Party. So much so he drove Mike Madrid away from it to say, we got to do something here. So if you have that much power with a party, then that's where you want to use your energy, is to find somebody who's visionary, who's leaning into Latinos and working class values, who wants to make sure Social Security, all the things that I believe in. Hell, I'm starting to talk to people now about running for president in 2028 in full disclosure. I don't want to.
You're running for president?
I'm not running for president. I said in Politico yesterday.
I was going to say, you heard it here first on the Latino Vote podcast. We're making bigger news here.
Didn't you read in Politico yesterday? They were like, Chuck Rocha, don't you think that your experience of being a criminal and having a felony conviction hurt you as a DNC? I'm like, that's why I'm running for DNC. I just have one felony. If I had 34, I'd run for president.
Who knew it was an asset now? You keep telling me it was a liability. That's an asset.
But I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to help somebody if they want my help to run for the DNC. I think we should raise a lot of money. I think we should try to win these governor's races, and I can do that without being the chair. You need somebody in the chair who can wear a suit and go to New York and go to San Francisco and sit in these rooms and get the dollars if that's what the job is, set up low dollars. As long as they've got a 50 straight strategy, they're going to work with rural America and farmers and work in the Latino community and talk about year-round organizing. Count me in. And I don't care if they're white, if they're black, if they're male, if they're female. I don't give a shit about any of that. I want people that go back to talking about the Democratic Party that made me join it over 30 years ago when we were fighting for NAFTA and fighting to fight back against NAFTA when I was trying to keep my job in Tyler, Texas. So there's a lot more I can do there. There's a lot more I can do with Mike Madrid on this podcast. There's a lot more I can do on CNN. That's where folks are watching in other places, not who's the chairman of the party. So that's where I want to be. I want to be there creating change and doing this. This, me not running for chairman, means that Chuck Rocha is just going to get on a fishing boat and go away, which, by the way, I'd like to do. But that means that I'm just going to continue to work at a different level. But, Mike, I appreciate you asking about it. And for those of you listening, this will not have been live very often, and I'm only doing this long of an interview with Mike and with the podcast for you, the ones who listen to us every week, who text me and sees me in the airport, sees Mike, talks about it, who's bought Mike's book. You know, a lot of me reading Mike's book and then my real life experiences have really made me a better consultant on figuring out what we're going to talk about next, which is these California congressional races where Chuck Rocha whooped a bunch of Republican ass. But thank you, Mike, for talking.
Yeah, well, look, I'm proud of you. This is the beginning. Obviously, it's not the end. And just for even considering it and putting yourself out there nationally, it ain't easy. It's always tough. Being a political professional and then becoming a candidate is something that I've always admired because I would never do it. So God bless you. Your party needs you. I have a very strong suspicion you're going to be a central piece of whatever administration builds going forward. Let's talk about some of those successes. So let's talk a little bit about some of those House races in California. Broad picture, real quickly. Everybody who thinks this was a landslide election, as the data comes in, pretty clearly it was not. This was a much, much closer race than the first 72 hours of the outcome of the race projected, or at least was pointing to. Donald Trump will win a very, very small popular vote victory. I guess that's a big deal for a Republican. It is. I mean, I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but much, much smaller than Hillary Clinton's victory when she won the popular vote over him in 2016, certainly with Biden. And most interestingly, did quite well in Senate seats that should have broken further away from them as Republicans picked up the White House. And the same dynamic appears to have happened. Very small, I think, a net Democrat +1 pickup in the House. Maybe you know better than I do, but this is the second cycle in a row where the party who loses an incumbency sees them pick up houses down ticket. Is that accurate? Did the Democrats pick up one seat after all
Picked
the
up two if you count the special in New York.
Okay, two. So it's a net pickup of two in a year when they lost the presidency. Again, same dynamic as 2020 in reverse. The Republicans lose the presidency. Joe Biden, of course, wins, and the Republicans pick up seats in the House when they lose. So to me, there's something that we ought to be paying attention to. This idea that there's some sort of a mandate or philosophical change in the country, I think, is just complete horseshit. And I think that the numbers are really bearing that out. But with that little setup, why don't you walk us through California? Because I know for months, and there was stuff that you couldn't tell me. I didn't want to know what seats you were working on. But I know that there was activity that you were deeply engaged in, because suddenly I'd look at you and you're in the Central Valley of California. I'm like, what the hell is that guy doing in my state without asking me what's going on? I know it's not a holiday. I know Uncle Dan doesn't live out in Fresno. So what's going on? But Chuck, talk to us about what races you involved and what you were seeing out there.
Two things that you brought up that are very important. One is that this pickup of these two seats were mainly due because of California and New York. So it's the same dynamic. Again, not a presidential state. We've talked about this a lot. The pickups in those two states were five switches from them while holding on to seats. We didn't lose any seats. So we pick up New York 4. Chuck Rocha Solidarity worked in New York 4. We pick up New York 22. Solidarity and my team worked on New York 22. We pick up these seats in California, which are California 27, California, the steel 13. Seat 45. And then 45. I was going to say, yeah. And then the new one, which I really want to get into with Mike, is 13, which you've heard Mike Madrid talk about ad nauseum, but in a good way, is that he told us to watch it last time and nobody thought it was even there and we lost it. So it was really interesting. And of all 5 seats, my firm did all the Spanish language and a lot of Latino outreach in every one of the pickups. We did every one of these races, not by the party, not by the candidates. The candidates still hire the same consultants they've always had. But to my point about the DCCC and House Majority PAC getting smarter, not just because they hired Chuck, because they hired lots of other Latino consultants as well. It just so happens the ones we worked on, we won. Anyway, they hired us and we came in earlier. We did more longer term organizing. But in California, before we get to California 13, which Mike knows a ton about, let's set the stage in California for all of you nerds. And I love you nerds because you're just like me and Mike. As of 4 days ago, the vote total, if you say, well, Chuck, you said you and Mike that the Latinos underperformed even more in places where there weren't, and they did. They just underperformed less in these districts, and there's a reason. But the overall story in California is about a lack of turnout from Democrats. If you go back 4 years ago, now keep in mind, if we go back 4 years ago, there's less people to vote. Let me say this in another way. Since 2020, think about how many people have become 18, how many people have registered to vote, and how many more people were eligible to vote since 4 years ago. But 4 years ago, if you compare those numbers to the numbers of the election, and again, they're still counting votes in California, but it's almost done. But as of 4 days ago, that long Mike Madrid windup would say that Donald Trump got 100,000 more votes than he got 4 years ago. Almost the same exact vote total. About 100,000 more. I forgot, Mike, out of how many millions of votes he got, but it was millions and millions. Democrats, this is really where you need to pay attention. 1.7 million less voters voted in 2024 than 2020. You are not hearing that wrong. Almost 1.5 million, actually 1.7 million less Democrats show up to vote than last time. There's your difference. There's your difference in all of these over performances. Sure, Republicans perform at the same level and just a hair bit more, while Democrats turnout falls off. Now, I'm sure before I turn this mic over to Mike, he has a lot to say about that. But this is the reason why in lots of areas you can't judge it all against each other, because in places where there was a robust combat for Democrat and Republican, Republicans lost, Democrats win, because at many of the places upstream, people were voting for Donald Trump and then leaving. They did not vote down the ticket. And that's one of the reasons that we have Congressman Gray now in California 13 and many of these others where there's literally 1,000 votes or less making the difference. So I wanted to lay that all out there to say that, yeah, California 13 is different than California 27. 27, where Mike Madrid's house was, more suburban, lots of folks. 13 Central Valley, not quite as rural as 22, but right there next door. And so we win that now by 188 votes, when I think the last time Duarte won it by like 150. Like it's
Right.
that close. So
Yeah.
that's the dynamics of what I saw in California. What do you want to add to all of that, Mike?
Well, look, I think you outlined it perfectly. And again, California is very unique and gives us a really good glimpse of some of those House races. This last race of the cycle, called in California 13, this is up in the Stockton area. This is where Adam Gray just beat incumbent Republican John Duarte by about 180 votes. Very, very, very close race. This district is half suburban, half rural. And a lot of those rural precincts are what we call Hispanic dense communities. And in the suburbs, it's where Latinos are more second, third generation U.S. born, intermarrying, moving into the burbs. They're not in Hispanic dense precincts. You can't just go and build massive turnout operations and turn everybody out, because you'll be turning out a lot of Republicans. So it gets real tricky now. Both parties are going to have to change their dynamics. They're going to have to change their approaches on what they're doing, because when you and I were kids, you could go into a Hispanic dense precinct, and Chuck Rocha kind of made his name and reputation by being able to do these massive turnout operations and win races by knocking and dragging and bringing abuelitas to the polls and doing big operations like that. That's getting harder and harder for Democrats to do. It's part of why they need to get back to that blue collar messaging. But here's my broader point. And I think what Chuck's takeaway is really important. 1.7 million less Democrats showed up to vote. For 20 years, and I've been saying this not as a Republican, not as a Democrat, as a Latino advocate, the idea that low voter turnout is something specific to our community is complete baloney. Okay? We are the only group that goes out there every year. You're going to hear a handout. A lot of people listening to this podcast, working for nonprofits, who say, we don't talk enough to Latinos early enough. We need to spend more money early. We need to give my nonprofit more money and we'll turn out these voters. And it never happens. That's not a turnout problem. It's a policy problem. You don't hear that in the Black community. You don't hear that in the Asian Pacific Islander community. You don't hear that in the white community. You only hear Latinos doing that. Why is that? The reason is because we're not talking to our community. And if this election told us anything, it's exactly that. The entire year, there has been this weakness amongst Latinos. It started with Joe Biden when the numbers were horrible, and RFK's numbers were up at the 20% level. And everyone's going, how can that possibly be? Why do they like RFK? The reason is because they didn't like Biden and they hated Donald Trump. Where the hell else were they going to go? RFK drops out of the race. And then Joe Biden drops out of the race, and Kamala starts consolidating that vote a little bit more. Not a whole lot, not this whole restart, rejuvenated, the whole world has changed and we're back again. There was dissatisfaction with the Democratic Party, guys. That's what happened. That's what we saw. And more importantly, when you put up a scenario, we got Donald Trump, an unpopular incumbent party, what's going to happen? People aren't going to show up. It's not because they didn't know a race was going on. It's not because people didn't knock on their door. It's because they're like, what the hell am I voting for? And that's what all the polling was showing going into the last stretch here, was that I will keep coming back to the New York Times Siena poll of Latino voters a week before the election. When Latino voters were saying, over 50% were saying the Democratic Party understands people like me. Those are good numbers. But not many of them believed the Democratic Party was going to make a difference in their own lives. That's why you have low voter turnout. That's the problem. You can't just keep saying representation matters when you don't get results. Representation without results you're making people more cynical. You're getting people all hopped up on hopium and believing that the world's going to get a whole lot better. And then when nothing changes, you don't build more housing, prices get more expensive. All you're doing is you're letting people down more for the next time. And then you wonder why they don't want to show up and vote when you've promised them, you've promised them, you've promised them. And every time you've fallen short, why the hell should they show up and vote? And then what happens is in a situation like this, you start losing more of these voters to the Republicans, as has been happening for a decade. I pointed out in my book, the Republicans are winning despite themselves, not because of their best efforts. This is why the Republicans are picking up votes. It's not a pro-Republican vote, folks. There's no evidence, there's no data showing Latinos becoming more conservative. None. There's a lot of data and evidence, a lot of it showing Latinos becoming more populist. They're against both parties. And when you're running as a populist candidate, as Donald Trump did against an establishment candidate like Kamala Harris was, this is what's going to happen. It's not that Trump's going to get more votes, although it will manifest that way. It's that Kamala Harris is going to get less votes, and it doesn't matter because the outcome is the same. So that's my and you're going to hear me talk a lot about this in the coming weeks and months because a lot of those same groups are going to be out there saying, oh, we need to do voter registration drives. Oh, we need to do voter registration efforts. It's all horse shit. It's always been horse shit. And Mike Madrid is you know me, I'm a shrinking violet. I'm a real shy guy. I'm going to be out there saying it because it's not in the best interests of our community. It's not. You want to get voter turnout? Let me tell you how to do it. Start addressing the problems that people are saying that they're facing. You do that. You quit talking about just undocumented immigrants. If you start talking to voters where they're telling you they've got problems, you're going to start getting voter turnout. If you don't, then don't expect to be able to buy that turnout from the Wall Street, donors and all those slick suits that you were talking about earlier, given to the DNC chairman and feeding it through these nonprofit operations. That was proven to be a scam that it always has been this year. And there needs to be some really, really deep introspection about what went wrong. And that has to be at the top of the list.
When we were doing these focus groups, to back you up a little bit on some of that, is when we were in California 13, I've been holding this until we won for you, is that, most Latino voters, when we do Latino focus groups and Latino heavy polling in both languages, they didn't know who their congressman was. They didn't know who Duarte was. They don't know who Gray is. There's a few things that my team did with House Majority PAC, who I give all the credit to, like they drug Gray across the finish line. Like what we did there with all the help from the House Majority PAC was start early, Mike. We started talking to Latino voters there in March. How crazy is that? That we were using C4 money that was moved through House Majority PAC, which is that's their PAC, but they have a C4 arm where we could do accountability work against Duarte on what he had been doing in Congress, which was very little, to start paving the road of he's not working for you in Congress to this broken promises narrative that Mike is talking about. The campaign hated us doing it. Like they would signal to us that they didn't want us doing the broken promises shit. I'm like, it works in the focus groups. It's working in the polling. There's got to be something here. And then they trusted us to do the ads on that because without mentioning Donald Trump, without mentioning Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, we discredited that guy with enough voters to just barely win. But starting that in March and April, instead of the final 2 months, is the difference because then it was everybody else. And for all of you Democrats out there listening, this is a philosophy, not a philosophy. It's a proven tactic that just continues to work when you expand your target, like I wrote about in my book. And then you look at who you're trying to reach. If you get there early and you're the only one in the mailboxes or the only one on streaming, we bought an astronomical amount of YouTube in this race because that's where these Latinos consume information every day. Like I want to build off of the success we've had there. And in 2026, it'll be a new challenge because there's a lot of these voters who don't normally come back for a non-presidential year. But my team, mainly Luis and Daisy and crew, put together Spanish language and English language ads targeted Latinos saying, these Republicans don't give a shit about you either. And at least this guy Gray is something a little bit different that, he's not, we blame the incumbent just like Republicans would blame Joe Biden and incumbents for not the frustration and I'd say the anxiety in working class, middle class people's lives. And so we did that without talking about immigration, without talking about whatever criminal justice reform, like all the things that white consultants think that we care about. We showed up to talk about a rigged system that wasn't working for them. And we blamed incumbents. I blame Mike Garcia. It's the same shit we did with a guy named Whiteside, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Like I said, Mike Garcia has turned his back on us. He's been in Congress. He ain't doing shit for us. That's the secret that how we won these races. And we did it in Spanish and English over a long period of time, very culturally competent. I got them, Mike. I didn't get them. They agreed to this. This was a mutual thing. I can't take all the credit. And we went into these districts and actually put people to camera. We weren't doing quote unquote studio ads. We had real people talking to camera about real life things. And we ran abortion ads. Don't get me wrong. And abortion works really good in California 27. It's a suburban district with lots of white and Latino folks with money and houses. It's more than the poor farming district in Fresno or in Tulare or wherever you're at. So having me there, but more importantly, and I'll finish with this, having my business partner, Luis, there. You know, Luis grew up there in the Central Valley. He went to school, high school there. Then he goes to Fresno State. Keep in mind, Luis was DACA, Mexican immigrant, came here when he was like 11, just got sworn in. We've talked about this on this podcast a couple months ago, and I got all teary-eyed like a little girl. But he's from the area. So guess who made the ads? Luis made the ads and flew out there and was filming people from the community. Then it just shows up a little bit different, right? You can just see it because you have somebody, not a New York City or a DC consultant, somebody from the community who is an undocumented immigrant making the ad. When's the last time that happened?
It's perfect. That's exactly right. And that's what it's going to take to win races going forward. And look, I love this conversation. I love this podcast because we're saying things that you're not going to hear even in those smoke-filled rooms, you know, in both parties, because no one's willing to kind of, you know, speak truth to power on this stuff. But look, I'm not afraid to take on Republicans, so I'm certainly not afraid to take on Democrats. I'm going to be doing it a lot. You know, I'll be meeting with members of the Latino caucus here in California, offering some really straight, hard up, cold medicine and saying, you guys, if you guys don't get your shit together, you're going to continue to lose. And you're going to hear this again from Mike Madrid. I said it in 2020 when the Latino consultants working for, you know, Joe Biden were saying there is no Latino shift happening, and it did happen in 2020. I wrote a damn book because no one else was listening to say it's happening. Here's why it's happening. Here's the states you need to focus on. This is what you need to do. And he's heard the same denial going on in the party. Oh, it ain't happening. It ain't happening. Then, of course, it happens, and now everybody's an expert on the rightward shift. Like, literally, everybody's a fucking expert out there, which is fine. I don't care. Yeah, everybody can take credit for it. I got all these people write. I've been writing about this for 2-3 years. I've been talking about this for years. We're the only ones with the receipts, Chuck. You wrote a book. I wrote a book. There's episodes of this going back a few years, and I say that only to say this. If the Democrats don't straighten it out, it will happen again in 4 years and in the midterms. You've already lost this vote. You have to now fight back. You may have had a 20-point, you know, lead going into the fourth quarter. You're now 4 points down, is the way you need to look at it. You can complain and say, well, you know, historically we've had a 20-point lead. You don't have that lead with Hispanic men anymore. You don't. So you better recalibrate entirely your approach and look at it like a basketball game or a sporting event where you are only up 3 runs or you are down 3 runs. You've got the narrowing window to fix this problem. And when I say fix, I mean, you're going to have to reboot and restart because the old systems you've had and the old way of thinking do not work anymore. They have failed you. Some of us were saying they're going to fail you. And I'm the Republican in the room. I was the one saying it. You're headed for disaster. And you know what? Disaster struck. So if you take anything from me, it's that if you don't start over, if you don't clean the slate and start rebuilding your systems and reimagining what you need to do, you're going to end up with the exact same results.
There's a philosopher named Papal who used to say, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. And I think Mike Madrid just threw down some papal wisdom there. My granddaddy used to say, look, y'all, we've got 2 more of these podcasts before the end of the year. We're going to do next Wednesday. We're going to kind of go deep dive into some of these other races. We kind of spent today talking about the DNC in California. And then we're going to have the year-end episode the week before Christmas, because I'm going to give Mike off the week of Christmas and the week after Christmas. And then I'm going to go take a honeymoon in January. So we'll probably do a special Christmas episode in 2 weeks where I'm going to make Mike Madrid dress up like Santa Claus. That'll be fun. And we'll talk about probably the best and worst. Mike, what do you think about us in 2 weeks doing a best and the worst of the year, maybe of winners and losers, and doing an episode like that?
I think it should be a 3-hour episode, and I'll just come unleashed. Yeah.
Good God. I'll never get hired by anybody. I went from not running for the DNC chair to Mike Madrid pissing off every Democrat who would never hire me anyway because they're like, aren't you friends with Mike Madrid? He hates us. I'm like, Mike Madrid is harmless. He just mouthy like me. Anyway, everybody, thanks for tuning in this week, and we'll get back with you in a week from today. Don't forget to like us and share all the things. And if Mike makes it back from Disneyland, I want you to bring a set of those ears to wear next week on the podcast, okay?
I will do that. Thanks so much, Chuck. Great to be with you again, as always. And I'm looking forward to conversation next week.
All good. Y'all be good.
Thanks, Chuck.